spoiler alert for all books, and so that might mean spoiler for the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to my ongoing conversation with Christina Strain about Shadow and Bone Season 2. So in this video, we will be talking about episodes 5 through 8. Maybe some other stuff. We don't know. If you did not watch the first part, I would recommend that you start there, and then you can come back and watch this. So getting into episode 5, that is the episode that you wrote. And I knew from what happened with season 1, we had talked about how you're really into book quotes. So, and incorporating them into what you write for the show. And I clocked that immediately. And truly the kismet of your episode being what had I Know Metal, which is a thing that I've been screaming about needing to see since I decided I was going to watch the show because I found out they were making the leads Asian. And then I read the books, and the only thing that I knew-ish was that Luke Pasqualino would be playing David. And he was like the only character that I liked in those books, in that trilogy, before watching the show. And then that speech was the one. And then it finally happened. I think you said, oh no, I remember how this happened. I was messaging you as I was watching it, and I had gotten to episode 5, and you had said something like, oh, I have a David, because I was ranting about David and Genya and just being an emotional mess. And you said, oh, there's a David Genya surprise for you in my episode, or blah, blah, blah. I said, if it's I Know Metal, I'm going to scream or whatever. 10 seconds after I sent that, the I Know Metal speech happened. I was like, oh my God, I know metal, it's happening. And yeah, it was a whole ordeal. So
yeah, and I knew that was. So the funny thing is, I wrote the first draft of my episode for season 2. It was due the day episode 1 dropped. So I knew that was in there when you and I first started talking. So I had known the entire time that you were going to get that in my episode. And I never told you because I was just like, never going to tell her. Never going to tell her. Let's see how this goes. And
which I'm fine with. I liked that I got to experience it as it should be.
Yes.
The not knowing and then getting the thing that I wanted. See, if it was the not knowing and then I didn't get it, it might have been like, oh. But because the payoff came.
Of course we did that scene. How could we not do that scene? There's a bunch of stuff in this show that it's just they're earmarks, right? There are things that we all we know we need to do. And what's funny is it wasn't even planned out this way, but what's funny is when it comes to Genya, I've gotten the majority of what I consider massive Genya scenes. So the confrontation between her and Alina in season 1 is in my episode. And then her return to Alina is also in my episode. And then her reunion with David and the I Know Metal speech is also in my episode. I love that character so deeply. So there were certain things that we all went back and forth about. And when some of those things landed in my episode, I was like, I know exactly how I'm going to do all of these. I know exactly how I'm going to do. I was like, Alina is not going to be mad at her because she has processed everything she's been through. They are going to be fine. They're going to come back together because the weight of what Genya has been through, Alina understands, and she no longer she's processed it. She's been through it. She's not mad at her. She's just happy to see her friend survived. She needs to have a confrontation with somebody. The king is dead. It's got to be the queen. And the thing is with the queen is the reason that scene was important to me was I was like, Nikolai needs to understand the weight of his job now as king, and he needs to do right by his people by banishing his mom. I was like, he does this in the books, and I really want to highlight this. And I feel like it's a lot more important. The version where it's just his mom, who is the only member of the family who has ever shown him any kindness or love, is a lot harder. So the way that I approached that in this episode was I was like, I want everybody to have to make very difficult decisions and admit very difficult things to themselves. And Nikolai is going to pay the price. So yeah,
which I'm fine with because I don't care how charismatic he is, I'm always down to watch monarchs suffer. Because let me tell you, when I was reading those books and they said, oh, we'll just send you away to the colonies, and when I saw the C word,
death to the enemies of the people of the Republic. Hurrah! Justice is served.
When you consider the situation they've been put in, that conversation that he has with his mom, there is an accuracy there, where there is a certain amount of choice and no choice, right? Just to consider the bubble they're in. The thing that I thought was interesting that we discussed in the room was his mom's job, right? Because like the back and forth that we had was like, let's be real about a woman's position in this situation. She didn't choose this marriage. She didn't have a choice, which is part of like the one little empathetic thing that you could potentially give to her, that she was probably like a child bride who was married off. And like, she didn't, this system is not good for her either. But the sheer fact that
you can say her name.
Wait, what?
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 I said Princess Diana. You can say her name. Ooh. And I wasn't
even thinking Princess Diana.
I was thinking, you know, I just despise all monarchs, and I just want them all to.
I get it. I know. I totally get it.
I'm not going to finish that sentence because I'll be banned, but like.
Listen, I don't believe in monarchs either. I'm just thinking about the world that we are playing in right now. But like the reality of the situation is this: if Nikolai is going to try to be a quote unquote good king, if there is such a thing even possible, your job is to actually take care of your people. And like, if that requires you to sacrifice your mom, like that's the first test he had to endure, where it's like, if it costs you the one person in your life that you love, are you willing to do it? And he like made the right choice. It's like his mom didn't. His mom like,
yeah,
like as much as she endured, the choice that she made cost a lot of people like their lives. And it's just like, I can't forgive that. So yeah,
no, and it was interesting.
Well,
it was interesting rereading the books because I remembered the main beats of the story. For example, I knew that Genya gets mutilated by the Darkling because he's disgusting. So I knew that was there, but for some reason, the details of her, I don't know what you would call it, a short story or her chapter, the Tailor, that's in, I think it's at the end of Siege and Storm. For some reason, a lot of the details of that had faded from my memory, or I don't know if I missed it the first time that I read it. I can't say for sure either way, but rereading it, I've never been in a fight. I've never been in a fist fight, but I was just, I'm ready to do violence. I will protect this girl because nobody else is. And like, I was really glad to see there was a clip of Daisy going viral where she said in no uncertain terms whatsoever on the show's press junket, where she was explaining that she is a victim of abuse and that the Darkling is the one who put her there. And I was like, ooh, say it louder for the people in the back.
That's the thing that like I can't get over. Like, it's explicit in the book. It's explicit in the book. So like, look, my episode, to be perfectly honest, this is one of the hardest episodes I've ever had to write, because so much of my episode is very much about characters coming to term with the very violent abuse that they've had to endure, which I know isn't very cute. And I know with YA fans, it can be really hard to process the reality of that situation, because YA is written in a way that it can get dark and it can get dirty, but like the idea is that it's young adult and there's a fantasy. And if you want to kind of try to mentally gloss over the realities of the situations, maybe you can. I can't. When I have to write those situations, I have to sit there and I have to embody what these characters are going through, because I have to understand where they're coming from and their perspectives are and what my actors are playing. It's a very heavy episode that like the Darkling did terrible things to these women, and I like had to sit there and process it. It's a lot.
I don't know if this is still going on to the degree that it was however many years ago, because media owned by certain people or certain corporations doesn't always cover the realities of what is or is not happening in real life. But I know that there was a period of time where there were a lot of acid attacks happening. And it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know how much I even want to bring that up, because it's like, I don't want people to get any ideas, be like, do that. But the level of you're mutilating someone, and her whole thing is that her being beautiful, I mean, not to just completely reiterate everything that David already says, but it's just, it is a weapon for her. It's a protection for herself in a world and in a space that is already very unsafe, just because there's a war going on. If you were trying to make it out to be some sort of, well, if you do X, there's a consequence, cause and effect type thing. One bite on the shoulder, like what Alina gets in the book. One bite. You could have done one bite, and instead you destroyed. I mean, Daisy is so beautiful that like even when, after her mutilation, she's still pretty. Let's not even lie to ourselves. She is still a beautiful woman.
Dude,
let's not even pretend. But you know, the principle of the matter is watching her run away from David multiple times. I was like, my heart is outside of my body. My heart is outside of my body. This is literally Temple of Doom. Like, it's been ripped out of my chest. It is outside of my body. That was really, I mean, he's a villain and like, I'm not supposed to like him. So I'm not, when I say like, oh, I dislike him, that doesn't mean that like that's incorrect. Like I just said in the previous recording that I was wondering where Vasily was because I wanted to watch him suffer. So like, I don't need every character to be there for me to like them.
The Genya stuff, like listen, if you were to break it down structurally, just to like talk about like what the function of her tailoring herself was, that was a coping mechanism. You know, this was a character who was traumatized on a regular basis by everybody. She was literally put in that position by the person she trusted the most. She was like set up to be traumatized. The one coping mechanism she had was to make herself as beautiful as humanly possible because she didn't feel that way because she was traumatized. There's a lot there to kind of like explore in her. And I really think that Daisy did a beautiful job because it's a lot, you know, like I emphatically expressed, it was really hard for me to write that episode from multiple perspectives. And she has to like embody that character. Yeah. It's a lot. It's very intense. And so like, you know, one thing I'm very proud of our room for doing is like the women on our show. And also I should get Eric credit for this because he like listens to us. We had specific things that we wanted to make sure were very clear and very like not subtextual but textual. Like and a lot of it was like what these women had to endure. We didn't want to do the Hollywood soft version of it. We wanted to be very clear about what happened to them and just like go into that. I like to think that we did it successfully, and I like to think that hopefully girls who are watching this are kind of noticing things and like seeing ear markers of like potentially bad relationships that they could potentially avoid in the future by like seeing this behavior called out. I'm going to be honest, because I think that like to a certain extent, you know, responsible writing, not that all writing has to be responsible. I don't believe in writing just pure characters or anything like that. I believe in writing morally gray, complex, interesting characters. But there are certain stories that like me growing up were told on a regular basis. And one of the things that we set out to do was to like try to write healthy relationships and call out bad ones. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so like, I feel like that's something that doesn't get, you know, like isn't as readily available for younger women as could be. And so we wanted to do that for this and we did it. And I really think that all that material was always in the books.
Yeah.
So we just highlighted it.
Yeah. I definitely think that when going back and rereading the books, I think the Genya David stuff stuck out a lot for me. Yes. The only thing is that because the books are the first trilogy, because they're so limited by Alina's POV, I never felt like I got to go all the way there with certain people that I maybe would have liked to have gone there with. But the show, you know, is just by the nature of the format is not constrained by that. It's almost as though you need to be old enough and you need to have processed enough things to fully appreciate Genya's story. Until you become old enough that you can really look back at your own experiences and be like, oh, these are the ways that adults in my life failed me.
Yes.
When I needed them to not.
I love problematic characters. I love them. Like, I love writing about characters who make mistakes and make poor choices. Like, I love Genya. Genya did some truly terrible stuff, you know? But if you understand the position that she came from, you can't fully blame her for some of the choices that she made. Everybody has sides to them. And I'll say this about the Darkling. Even the Darkling, I try to come from a perspective of empathy, because I don't believe he was born a monster. I believe that, like, through a series of things that happened to him, like, he became a monstrous character. Like, that's the whole point of his character, right? But he did it. He's not a good person. He made really bad choices, and then he hurt a lot of people and didn't have any remorse for it. So it's just like, you have to be able to look at things from all perspectives to fully understand it. But I do feel like the female characters in this show, like being, you know, I'll say my age, I'm 41, like being a 41-year-old woman, looking back at my own history of relationships and like what I've been through, I can empathize with every single one of these female characters because I have been in every single one of these relationships. Every single one of them. I didn't write my episode from a place of complete ignorance. I wrote that from a very like specific place of experience in my age. You know, I have experienced these things. It helps sometimes to put all this stuff on paper, not only for myself, but like, again, like I was saying, like it helps sometimes for girls to see this and understand, oh, that's not okay. I shouldn't have to deal with this. Oh, that is bad. That's not me, that's them, you know?
If you get to a place in your life where either you've worked through things or you just never had enough of a problem to begin with, I feel like it's just so clear that male characters like Mal or David are so much more appealing because they're just really nice and really sweet and super romantic just by being themselves. It's not even them trying to be performative of romance. It's like, oh, I'm going to model behavior and actions of the movies told me that I should buy these flowers. It's very, I just am going to adore you for the person that you are. I'm going to support you in whatever way you need to be supported. I'm just like, oh yeah, that's.
Let's talk about Mal for a split second because I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, and well, because I didn't really know where to bring it up, but it's just like repeatedly stuff in my notes was just like, oh my God, like Mal and Alina are so cute. We're on a time limit, so I wanted to make sure that I had time. Yeah, but we can talk about it now. Yeah, definitely.
Let's talk about them for a split second because they do have a big fight in my episode. And so I do want to talk about that fight because I do think that that fight is really important. So listen, as many unhealthy relationships as I've ever had, I've also had a really healthy, loving marriage of almost 15 years. Dagan Franklin has been with her partner for like 10 plus years. And then Shelley's been married for a long time. And something that I find really interesting about Mal is that like the women on this show, and even the men, I feel bad because I feel like I'm discrediting, but like the women in this show in particular have very strong feelings about like what a good relationship looks like. And because we've, you know, experienced it. And it's just like that conversation that Mal and Alina have in my episode is very much rooted in like some of the fears we have about our supportive, you know, partners, where it's just like, are there times where we expect them to support us too much? You know, is like, are we supporting them as much as they're supporting us? You know, like in the books, Mal gets very jealous, and that is a very natural thing for people to feel. There is nothing wrong with occasional jealousy. The question that we always had was like, what is the actual root of that jealousy? Because that is really the more interesting thing to get to. And for us, it was just like, you know, he can be, if we want to do the version of him that's like pissy just because she's like talking to Nikolai, that seems easy. That seems simple. That doesn't.
Not interesting.
Yes. We've seen this 1,000 times before it's done. What is the real reason that there's the jealousy there, right? The real jealousy comes out of the sheer fact that he realizes like she's meant for more and his future doesn't necessarily lie with her. Now that we know that, let's talk about what that actually looks like. And let's actually mind that. Because the jealousy stuff is like boring, whatever. The real crux is like him realizing, fuck, I don't actually see our futures colliding in the like I see her leaving me because she's by nature going to go in that way. I just want to hold on to her for as long as I humanly can. And now I'm getting mad that she doesn't seem to realize that this is what I'm doing. Like I'm holding on for. So like for us, that was the thing, right? Where it was just like, he's upset because she doesn't seem to realize that the two of them aren't meant to be in the way that like she's thinking. Like,
or at the bare minimum, maybe not right now.
Yes, where it's just like, listen, in 5 years, are we actually going to be together?
He's got to go on a gap year. He's got to go traveling, you know.
Yes.
They got to go away to university. Once they graduate, if they're still compatible, they will be. You know, they can find their way back to each other.
Can we also talk about real quick? I'm going to pat myself on the back here. I've known since season 1 that they were going to have great chemistry. Like, I was like, I know everybody's like Ben Barnes and Jessie Maylee have incredible chemistry when they make out in season 1, but I have known since day 1 that Jessie and Archie were going to be fucking fire when they started making out. I was just like, I love them.
Yeah. I know that some people, they either don't like that I dislike the Darkling, or some people are like hyped about the fact that I don't like the Darkling and I say that publicly. But I do want to make it clear that I give full props to Ben for his performance playing the character, because he needs to sell that. He needs to really make it believable for me to be able to buy into the threat and the stakes of what that character is doing, what that character has done. And also, like, I do think that he plays it in a nuanced way, which, you know, having taken some acting classes, you know, if you're going to play a villain, you cannot approach playing them like I'm going to play the villain. You have to play it authentically of the truth for your character as they believe it, as they experience it. And that's what makes for a better, more nuanced villain performance. I mean, if you want to do something more cartoony, I think there's a time and place to do that as well. But it's, you know, it's certain types of stories, certain types of media that works for. But I'm not ever having a go at him just because I'm like, oh, this guy.
Yeah. No, I think people know. And this is the other thing, like, to your point, one of the hardest things about writing is, like, I don't love the Darkling. I mean, I'll say that. Like, I think that, like, look, man, he's based on a really bad ex. Like, he's not the best guy. I think there's nothing wrong with loving, like, toxic relationships on a fantasy level. Like, enjoy what you enjoy. He's not my thing. That being said, I take writing every character very seriously. So, like, with the Darkling in particular, like, I really think that, like, we made sure to sit down and have real conversations and try to come at him from a place of empathy. Look, man, I've tried to get Demon in the Wood on the show. Like, Erica's tried to get, I can't get into it, but, like, we have tried to do more with the Darkling, and, like, it is, like, not happened for us. But, like, you know, Ben needs that stuff to come at it from a very, you know, specific place. He wants to understand where his character comes from. He latches onto this book for a very good reason, because he wants to be a fully fleshed out character. You can hate the character. The actor is great. There's nothing wrong with hating the character. Like, I had to, like, you know, I had to think about it a lot. Like, we try to look at everybody like real people and not like 2D villains.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the worst thing would have been if he was boring, and then I would have just have nothing to say, you know? Oh, and I want to make sure that I find time to talk about her. We've mentioned her, but I really want to give her her moment. Baghra. Oh my God. You know, when I think about, which characters do I relate to? There's something about, like, I love older women who don't filter themselves. I'm just in this thing now where I keep just wanting to rewatch The First Wives Club, Death Becomes Her. I love that stuff. So just hearing her constantly talking her son about him to his victims, directly to his face.
I know.
She's just so much fun to watch.
I just want to pay deep, deep, deep compliments to two people for this one, because Dagan Freakland wrote such incredible material for Baghra. Dagan is so good at dialogue. It drives me up the wall. Like, I read her stuff and I'm like, how do you write such pretty stuff? And then she can write comedy like nobody's business. And then I'm like, how do you do both? She wrote such a beautiful episode for Baghra. And then Zoe is a national treasure. Let me tell you, like, I went out and got drinks with her on a regular basis. And, like, Miss Zoe Lawmaker is, like, just precious. I love her dearly. I would do anything for her. She can tell me she wants me to rewrite an episode. I'll fucking do it for that woman. Like, I don't care. She can have whatever she wants. She just brought it every time. We were all so enthralled by her, and she's just such a natural kind of, like, just quirky presence. You sit next to her and she tells you stories and you're just like, I could sit here for 10 hours. I don't need to say a word. You can just talk at me. Don't talk to me, talk at me. Just keep talking. I love her so much. She's great.
Yeah, just the way, the energy that character has as far as material and performance is so much fun. Like, I kept writing down lines from her, like, you are who you are in spite of him. Love that. Like, more of us need to hear that. Those of us who have been harmed in our lives, we need to hear that. When she basically said, like, once I've killed my son, my time here is done. Just the fact that she's sticking around purely out of spite. Dude. Oh, she's so petty, and I love her. Like, I love her so much. And she's so extra. Know that I loved you, Alexander. Know that it wasn't enough. I'm like,
that is
so stone cold.
that was one of my favorite lines in the whole season. Like that line was so affecting where I just like, and I produced episodes 5 and 6. So I was on set.
As her dying words.
I know. This is what I'm telling you. Dagan wrote some crazy good lines for her, man.
Just stupid boy. Goodbye.
She just like, Dagan's writing, like, what was, I can't even remember. I'm so, like, my ADHD makes it impossible for me to remember lines cleanly. Yeah. But, like, there's, like, one line where she's talking about how, like, her mom saw her as a problem, essentially. And Alina's like, you were. And she's like, are you paying attention? I was. A mistake. And she's like, are you paying attention? Like, I was like, Dagan. Jesus Christ, this is so good.
And also, I just love that when she does that, Ben, you know, he plays it beautifully where he's genuinely super emotionally distraught. Yes. Even though he literally like abused his mother, he cut off her finger, he's horrible, but he's like genuinely emotionally distraught that she's dying. And she doesn't give a fuck. She's just like, stupid boy, and just leaves. Oh, I want to be her. I want to be her. Oh my God. My favorite genre of celebrity. Okay. My number one favorite genre of celebrity is the iconic people who rallied against the war machine. Your Muhammad Ali's, your Tupac Shakur's, your Jane Fonda's, your Ramon Estevez's, all of those people. My second most favorite genre of celebrity is the people who are old enough to be honest. Your James Camerons, your Ridley Scotts, your John Carpenters, where they just say things that everybody else will not say because they're PR and they're, you know, they're public. No, don't say that. Like, just keep inside voices, you know, don't say, and they're just like, I don't care. I'm saying it. And she's that energy. And I love her. Stupid
like,
boy.
As a Korean woman, like the level of no fucks giving as I get older and I speak is just like so great. But like, that was the thing. One of the things that I absolutely adore about Dagan is that she and I both had very tough moms. Immigrant parents, you know, like there's a certain amount of like, I didn't raise you to be happy. I raised you to survive. You know, that's you're like, yeah, that touched me. Lee also has a certain level of like understanding that kind of mom. And that's like very much where Baghra comes from. So like Dagan and I were like, I see Baghra. I have a mother too. Like, we get it. She's not gonna hug you. That's not her job. Like, I hug my children, by the way. I treat them very differently. I call my son and my daughter my teddy bears because I just like cuddle them constantly. I'm very I am not my immigrant mother. Which I think is kind of the way of things, where it's just like, my mom raised me a certain way. I'm gonna be real soft.
Yeah, but I mean, as much as I love to joke around and have fun with just her being petty as hell, you know, I do appreciate that one of her final acts was to save one of her son's victims, which was to sever the connection. And I do think that there's something really beautifully poetic about the idea of the older generations making amends in some way for things that they might have deliberately or inadvertently caused. And like, okay, so before I go, I'm going to try to help to clean up some of the mess. Can't say the same for real life people who are continuing to fund the war machine, which is the #1 source of pollution worldwide. But anyway, that's another rant we don't have time for. But yeah, no, I love her. Love Baghra. One of my top characters of season 2 by far.
That's something that I adore with her. Like, we gave her the full-on arc, right? So Demon in the Wood is the story of the Darkling as a child. He was like 13, 14, something like that in it. It's the first time he does the cut. And like his mom, like Baghra in that, is a very different woman. She will literally level a village to keep him alive. And her whole thing is like, survival, survival, survival. I don't care. Like, I'm going to keep my son alive. And she's a very different mom. So that was like a massive touchstone for all of us, including Ben. And the thing that we, like, she mentions it, we kind of reference it a little bit throughout the show for people who know, where like the Darkling even says to her in the first 4 episodes, in an earlier episode, like, you would have burned villages for me, because she did. She literally burned down villages to keep him alive. And then she's just like, I realized that that was a mistake that I made. And that was like a big one for us, for her to like realize that the way that she raised her son didn't leave any space for the survival of like the Grisha. It ended up becoming this kind of nightmare thing where she's just like, I made a big mistake and I have to rectify that. And it like, you know, it wasn't just the fold. It was like everything she witnessed, it just kept, you know, exponentially getting worse and worse and worse. And she just realized like, this is never going to end unless I stop it. And it was just like really nice being able to write that kind of an arc for her, because it gives Zoe something to consider. And it is a very real thing for her to like, Baghra does realize like, oh, he's a nightmare. Like I raised a nightmare child. He fucked up a lot.
Yeah. Well, and
my fault.
I talk a lot about Baghra serving comedy, but I think that the Darkling in some ways, I don't think it's necessarily that he or Ben is setting out to be comedic, but I process the material in such a way that I find it to be funny. The fact that he's trying to monologue and then he just can't finish it because he starts coughing. And I just start laughing. I'm like, so funny. After the reveal of Mal being a descendant from the same bloodline, when he visits him, he's like, I always knew there was something I liked about you. And it's like, no, you didn't. You never like, what are you, like, stop. You're so annoying, but like hilarious. This is so funny. And he's like, you will die when I kill you, cousin. I'm like, stop. It's so funny. I don't think you meant this to be funny, but I'm laughing because it's that thing of with villains, it's so easy for them to kind of start to slip into almost being camp, even if that's not an explicitly camp work of art. Like it's Shadow and Bone. It's not a John Waters film. I was just having so much fun with it. So, you know, I do have to emphasize that even though I harp on it a lot of, boo, the Darkling is abusive, I don't like him, there's still some moments where I'm just having a good time, which is nice because otherwise it's just perpetually like, oh God, he's the worst. So just these little moments of the coughing. Like, I don't remember what episode it was, but when he's trying to do his villains love to monologue. And then he just started coughing in the middle of it. And he couldn't continue. Oh, it was so fun.
It's one of those things where it's like, how do we outwardly and visually express that he's not doing well? We need to give him some bloody coughing. We need to like make him look sad. Like his hand needs to be effed up. And it's just like, oh, it's so hard. It's so hard, man.
Yeah. Well, and it's very like, how many times are there works of fiction where the main female character coughs into a handkerchief and it's red? It's like, all right, ticking clock. She's going to be dead by the time the story finishes.
I will say this. It is a tried and true like trope of TV for a reason. Like it is producible. Yeah.
There's probably more I could get into on that side, but I do want to make sure that we get into some of the stuff to do with the crows and Tolya going on their quest for this sword. So I believe that is this something from one of the later books? Because I know that because I was skimming the articles that came out, there were some things being drawn from, is it a duology that comes after Six of Crows duology?
Yes,
it's Nikolai's stuff. I haven't read those yet, so you can explain those in as much detail as you'd like. And that there's other supplemental material that I'm not necessarily as familiar with. So
big supplemental material is the fact that we used Sankt Nayar from a book called The Lives of Saints. So there's a book that Lee wrote that is literally just, it's like the Historia Sancti. It's basically like a book that has very short stories that give you information on all of the various saints in the world. So Saint Nayar is a shoe saint, and we wanted to, like, she basically made this sword of light, like that was so sharp it could cut through shadow. And that's in the book. And so we were just like, that's actually convenient for us. Like, what if we have a character get that sword? And so like, we did that and it worked out really well for us. The stuff that with Nikolai, we don't really go that deep into King of Scars. We kind of set up that we'll possibly do some King of Scars stuff if we get season 3. We'll see what happens. Like, the reason I say possibly is like, one of my personal rules is like, I might have like 2 or 3 ideas of what to do for a future season. I try not to go hog wild. Like, I don't want to pre-break a season, because like the worst thing that you can do is like show up in a writer's room pre-break a season and then be so stuck in it that you're not willing to like look at other pitches. So like I tend to do this thing where it's just like, I'm going to kick that can down the road and think about it later. So there's material that we have that we can draw from for season 3 for sure. And then how we go about executing it is like a different question, because the other interesting thing is that, you know, in the books, Alina and Mal go off to the orphanage and raise some orphan children and just hang out.
I hated that ending. Sorry. I mean, I think it's also just like the context is different in that for Alina to be adapted to being Asian and there being such a lack of main girls or main characters, main protagonists, like I don't want to see we finally get the cool magical powered main character and she's just gonna not have her powers anymore. I mean, I know, well, you know, Mal lost his powers, but I mean, she's top billing, so I was just like, I don't want to see that.
Thing. Also, she's #1 on our call sheet, like, and she's great and she loves the show, so obviously we're gonna have to change some stuff to accommodate the fact that we have an incredible #1 that we don't want to write off the show. It just changes some stuff, so we'll see what happens in season 3. We literally have no idea, because like we haven't done the room, so like there's no way for me to know what that'll look like. We have material to go off of, but like other than that, the majority of the stuff that we pulled that's not from like the books that you had read was from the Lives of Saints. So yeah, the Nayar stuff was fun. It was also really stressful for me because I was once again the only Asian in the room. And it was like, we're going to do a country loosely based on Asia. And I was like, I'm the one. Also, I'm Korean.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, you know, people act like it's a monolith and it's not. It's not. That's the thing is, like, I think people really, I'm not going to overly unpack it, partially because there's no time. But there are some people that really like to nitpick the quality of the material for Asians in the show, and I'm just like, okay, if you saw how the Shu are talked about and included or not included in the books, you'd be kissing the feet of these writers of the show that they improved upon it, because I did not like. Also, I did not like. I'm sorry, like, you know, I'm not saying that I dislike all the books.
Yeah,
that's not how I feel, but that part of it, I was like, I'm not a fan of this. I'm not. So.
Also, let me just throw out here some of the production complications we had. And I just want to give Eric some credit, because like I saw a ton of things coming our way on the production side that I was terrified of, and he helped a lot. One of the things that I immediately realized is like, we're going to go to Shuhan. I'm the only one here. I don't know anything about like I am not a historian. So in terms of like what Shuhan should look like, I'm not the person to ask, because, you know, we based Ravka off of like, I can't even remember the time period because my ADHD is like so bad about that. But like, there's a general like time period in which we took from like Russian visuals of architecture and art and like style for Ravka. My only thought was like, I was like, I don't want it to feel like a massive mishmash of Asia. I don't want it to feel like every single Asian country thrown into one. So the thing that I asked Eric to do very early on was to hire a consultant. So we had a cultural consultant who is like an Asian historian. And the thing that we said to her was like, we want to focus Beiju on the East. We want it to be primarily China, Mongolia, touch of South Korea. Korea in general, like just a touch. So she was the person that production talked to the most when designing all this stuff. And then, like I mentioned earlier when we were talking, is like the other thing we were fucking up against is we're shooting in Hungary. What part of Hungary looks like Asia, dude? We don't have Asian buildings to shoot. And then on top of that, all of our supplies for the way that we decorated the set deck and everything had to come from Europe. And so like we were up against a lot of these production nightmares, and we did our best. And like I just like costume had to like talk to our consultant. There was like basically Kimberly, our consultant, me, and my director. And that was like what we had to like get this block going. And we did our best. And I'm really proud of what we did. And then on top of that, like, do you know how expensive it is to create an entirely different country for 1.5 episodes worth of like it's 2 episodes, but like even then it's not 2 full episodes, it's parts of this episode. The amount of money that they put out to try to make this look like a totally different place and like with a totally different culture with totally all these costumes was so much money. And I am like so grateful to Eric, because there's a version of this show with a different showrunner where it goes so differently, like so poorly. And so like, yeah, it was like a combination of terrifying for me, because I was like, let me tell you, I've been the only Asian in a room for the majority of my TV career. And like, normally I'm used to dealing with the fact that there's going to be a combination of like Asians out in the real world who are mad at me for feeling like I didn't do it correctly. I get that. Everybody's entitled to their feelings. There's not enough representation for all of us. So of course we're all going to look at something and expect it to be what we want it to be. I'm used to having to deal with the disappointment of that. But this,
I was fine with it. And that's not just because I know you. It's just like in the grand scheme of what I dislike about show business, it's enemy number one is the fact that the State Department pumps a bunch of money into Hollywood to put out propaganda. And that literally the stakes are life and death, because brainwashing people to think that certain countries or certain ethnicities are the enemy.
dude.
So like, I don't care about like the nitpicking fictional universe, because you were saying, oh, like you would not imagine the cost of blah, blah, blah. I took a class on producing. So we had to do basically like a kind of like mock trial, but that where you have to make a packet of like your producer packet or whatever. And I was just going, my God, it's so much paperwork to be a producer. And this is not even a real thing that I'm making. This is just to like, just so you kind of get the basic building blocks of what you have to do. I was like, oh my God, if I become a filmmaker, I just need to find a John Lando to my James Cameron. Like, I don't want to do this paperwork. You do the paperwork.
Dude,
I don't want to do
our
it.
line producer, Craig, was like so good. Like he, like literally, his first thought was to look to see how much it would cost for us to shoot in Asia. Like he looked at all of the possibilities for us. Like he's a fucking champ. I really appreciate everybody and all of the efforts that they all went through. And like, to your point, like, you know, like when we're writing this, like the production stuff is a secondary thing. You know, part of the reason that I asked Eric to get us a consultant was because I wasn't going to be on board for the entirety of production. So some of these production choices were going to be made without me involved. So I was like, I need you to have somebody who like can check all of this stuff and like look at oversee things and answer questions that they might have. In the room side, the thing that I'm constantly thinking about is like, how are we portraying our characters? You know, like how are we doing a version of Shuhan that is inspired by the books, but not the books, you know, and like takes good things from the books and like subverts expectations in a better way. And like at the same time, doesn't make Fantasy Asia purely pure or anything like that. We want it to be complex and interesting. It was really nice because, you know, you don't see all the stuff that we talked about on screen, but like some of the things that we did discuss in order to like set up that world and what it would look like were very much based off of the concept of how Avatar, The Last Airbender handled their countries and everything. And like, we even went as far, listen.
No. And just for the sake of public record, everybody blames M. Night Shyamalan for that. That wasn't his fault. He's like the only Asian that's got any type of career consistently for as long as he has in Hollywood. That's above his pay grade of like why that movie turned out the way that it did. So we're not blaming him for that.
Yeah, and we're all part of this system that makes it very hard to get anything done to begin with. So like for me, like being in a room where like I had it like, guys, Eric Heiser listens, like I cannot express enough how much I love this man, because like anytime I had a concern, I'd bring it up and he'd listen. He wouldn't like shoot me down or tell me not to think about it. He would sit there and listen and consider it, and we would talk everything out. The fact that we have this on the show is mind-blowing to me. And then on top of that, again, this isn't like an Eastern European like period fantasy drama, and we got
also lots of Russians are Asian. People forget that, but there's literally like Soviet snipers who killed like hundreds of Nazis during World War II that like were honored you know, when it was the Soviet Union, like I try to memorize their names because I hate that we don't all just know their names. One of the guys' names is Semyon Nomakonov, and I'm like, where is his movie?
Like, I'm just happy to see a ton of Asians on screen. Yeah. Like, I mean, yeah, everything is difficult. Nothing is easy. It's a miracle that any television show gets made, guys.
Yeah, or any movie for that matter. So I'm looking at my notes and I'm panicking because there's so much stuff to cover. Really quick. So the opening of episode 5, because each opening has a different visual thing. The opening of episode 5, which is your episode, is 5 crows and one inside a closed window. The way that I cackled, and I was like, and that's where he belongs. And I was just laughing. Oh, the laughs I got. And I'm realizing now that we are 2 hours into recording and I've not addressed the Puritan extremist in the room. So if you'd like to, for a couple minutes, address that storyline, not like he's in the show that much anyway, feel free to say whatever you want to say. I have nothing I personally want to know, but you know.
All I'm going to say is this. I mean, the difficulty of that character is that, like, he's in prison. And, like, in order to get the version of that character in Six of Crows, like, if you want the Matthias that's in Six of Crows, he has to go through hell in prison. So it's just, yeah, it's tough because he's, like, so removed from everything. But I will say that, like, that opening for 205 with the little crows is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Like, I remember when I saw it, I was just like, this is so cute.
And for anyone who doesn't know, if you're watching these and you've not read the books, Matthias in Six of Crows, which is the first book of the Six of Crows duology, he is in prison and he gets broken out. So there's this question of, like, if you want him to be with everybody else, so are they going to break him out and then put him back in and then break him out again? I mean, really think about the logistics of that for a moment. I'm going, it's hard enough to get him out the one time. You want to get him out again? Hopefully,
no, we gotta leave him in there thinking about sexy times with Nina. That's what we got to do for a whole season.
And it's not like he didn't have a story. He did, but
he does.
It's just, you know.
Yeah, I mean, really, the roughest thing is
budgeting is a thing, and there's a lot of story to tell. So,
well, also for that character, again, to get him to where he is in Six of Crows, the thing we had to do is break him down.
Yeah.
Because when he, in Six of Crows, like, he is in such an angry and broken place.
Literally tries to murder Nina the second that they're reunited. So,
and to get him there, we had to put him in hell and, like, leave him there. So, like, that was kind of what it was for that. Which is, like, so depressing. We really are mean to characters this season.
In your defense, the books are not particularly nice to them either, so.
It's just funny because I'm just like, wow, Jesper and Wylan really were the only two that we were particularly nice to.
Yeah, and I appreciated the few little nods to further development of information about Wylan that, of course, book readers will pick up on, like the part where he says, I had a 2, and he doesn't finish the sentence. He's like, that's tutor. You had a tutor because you come from money, because you're Vanek's son. We've not met Vanek. And also that we were able to get that reveal already that he can't read. Yeah. And that's also something that's a bit different from more of the common struggles we see characters have, be it in the YA genre or just in general. Certain technological things that might help a person who struggles to learn how to read in 2023 do not exist in the Grishaverse. So he just... Well, he struggles, but he's really smart and he could do other stuff. He's been made to feel ashamed for that. And that's why, oh God, like that when they do that, where he's like, what, can't you read it? And of course, Jesper doesn't know. He's not saying it to be mean, but this is just the exchanged looks. I'm like, oh, I'm going to run away.
Well, they both do it, right? Because like the assumption they both have on the other is, like, unfortunate because, like, they accidentally poke at both of their, like, deepest shames. And, like, Wylan even steps in it where he, you know, poor Jesper thinks he's so fucking slick, and then he thinks nobody is picking up on anything. And in one season, 2 people are like, I mean, it's obvious. And he's just like, I hate this about myself. How do you all see this? And it's just like, my disaster children. I love them dearly. But, like, the Wylan stuff, I said this online and I can't, like, discuss the details, but, like, I've written the Wylan episode and, like, he is my son. I love him deeply. And it was so lovely because, you know, by the time I was producing this episode, we had already written it. So like the conversations that I was able to have with Jack about what I had written for him really helped inform the character. Between the books and like what he knew was potentially coming his way, it was just like, it was lovely. Yeah, I love that kid.
I love Jesper's arc of not just him having a cute romance, which of course is fun because I love a good romance, but him specifically receiving validation that he's never had about his powers. Well, he kind of, wait, okay. I'm assuming people who are watching this, a lot of them have already read the books, but it's dangerous to be known for having powers. So that's why he's been told to not show them. And there's also some my mother died when I was young trauma mixed in there. So it's a fun little cocktail. So I just think it's nice for him to see that, like, well, there's other people who have powers and they learn and they train and we can all fight together and you can be openly yourself and you don't have to live in fear and shame and hide who you authentically are. And just the catharsis of seeing him fucking up an evil Hot Topic Grisha with buttons. Oh, I like when the reveal, I was gagged.
Stay in your rooms. This is an emergency. There's an insane guest with a gun.
Dude, I just going back to the Jesper mom of it all, the Aditi stuff. Like, okay, you know, I've produced a few episodes of television and I have never cried on set from watching a performance before, but Rhoda put me through it. So like the Aditi scene, it's so interesting because like Rhoda doesn't have kids. Like that's the actress who plays Aditi. She and I gave our director one note for her because I have kids. And I just was like, the one thing I want to see her do is be strong for her son and not be too emotional. Because the thing is, like, when you're talking to your children, even though you're feeling lots of feelings, you're trying to be strong for them and let them know it's okay. So she did this incredible performance that was like holding in all of these big feelings she had because she was seeing her son and like being the version of the mom that Jesper remembered who like had it all together. And as she was performing it, I was like in Video Village, just bawling. I was just like, that right there is a mom. And I was just like bawling. And then like, you know, Karen Gaviola, our director for Block 3, who was also fucking fantastic and a Filipino lady, like I love her so much. She calls cut and I like ran out and was like, that was amazing, Ra, good job. Like I just gave her a big fat hug. It was so good. She and Kit put me through it that day because I was just sitting there in my mom feels at Video Village watching a son and a mom. And I was just like, they're so good. So yeah, those two jerks made me cry on set.
Tolya saying that thieves and soldiers are not different. I was like, ooh, spill the tea. Where did all of Libya's gold disappear to, U.S. government? Oh, that's so weird. That's so weird that like the most nice place to be in Africa all of a sudden is like you destroyed it and you stole all their gold because he wanted to launch a gold-based currency to defrank the, you know, it's now euros, defrank the country. Anyway, Kaz and Inej, big stuff in the second half of the season. So the first time I watched this exchange, I don't know what happened if I was taking notes. There's the few seconds where you see Inej asleep or knocked out from the gas that made them all knocked out and start dreaming or hallucinating or whatever. And I think I missed that because all of a sudden I look and it's just them in this room and they're really close to each other and they're like reaching. And I was like, what's happening? I was like, where are we? What's going on? And I was just shook. I was so in the moment. Yeah. And then eventually, you know, obviously it plays out and she's like, oh, I know this isn't real because there's no way this man would be acting like this. And then I was like, oh, okay, right. They were trapped in that room. I forgot. I was so in this scene. I was so in this chemistry that's playing out before my eyes. I forgot what was happening in the rest of this show. I really appreciated this, not just because I love a good romance and romantic chemistry playing out, but just because, again, these two people are so bad at sharing how they feel verbally. So it's like, how do you communicate that when you don't have the written word of a book? you have to show like, oh, this is what's in her brain,
Yes.
but it's not actually playing. And you immediately, right after that plays out, they both lie, and they're like, oh, no, I didn't see anything. If I'm gonna kick you both in the shin for if you don't stop lying to each other. I wouldn't do that. I like them, but you
again, Dagan Fricklin wrote an incredible episode. All of those like fantasy. Here's the thing. I've worked on 2 shows, one of which will never get made and I can never discuss. I've worked on 2 shows that used drug trips to get to the core of characters' damage. And like, it's one of my favorite like TV episodes. Like any episode where characters are just kind of like hallucinating their problems, I am game, because I'm just like, let's get it out. You don't want to talk about it? Let me drag it out of you. Let's go. This episode, Dagan did such a good job. She turned in that script and I was just like, oh, so mad I didn't get to write this one myself. Like, it's such a good episode. It's so good. I'm so jealous of this episode. But yeah, it's so good, right? Like everything in it, it's like it's everything she wants. And she wakes up because she realizes she can't have it. How fucked is that?
Oh my God. The fact that there were people being like, oh, I can't believe this is too fast. I'm like, it literally didn't happen. It didn't happen. It's in her brain. It's in her brain. You're complaining. You haven't even watched the episode. It didn't happen. How are you going to communicate to the audience that these 2 people are just emotionally, they're like this, but physically they're like this?
Yes.
So yeah, it was so good. And also people always, I know the fans always harp on, I cannot believe that these 2 actors did not have a chemistry read when they're so good together. And I'm gonna agree with that sentiment, because they are so good with each other. The chemistry is just so on point. Just the looks, just looking at each other, I'm like, do you want to be alone? Like, should I leave?
I just want to take a second to pay Freddie Carter a really big compliment. You know, every actor on this show is really good. Like, when I say really good, I mean they're really good giving scene partners. Like, if it's not their coverage, if the camera's not on them, they're still giving it everything. Like, if it's one of their scene partners' coverage, they are still performing so that that actor has something to perform against. There is something Freddie does that I am genuinely just touched by. And it is when his scene partners are expressing, like, they're kind of feeling out what they're looking for, and like they're trying to give a note on what, you know, the script might have for them, or trying to express how they feel about a thing that they just tried, he's silent. And I know that sounds like basic, but there is like, he is attentive and he is silent and he is genuinely taking in what everybody else is saying. So like, if Amita has thoughts, he is not interjecting. He is not telling her how to feel. He is just listening. He never has an opinion on her. Like, it is so lovely to watch. And every actor on this show is so good. But I distinctly remember during this scene, when we were shooting this scene by the fireplace, Freddie was just like, he let Amita run it. Like that's how I can express it. Like, he said everything he had to say, and then he let her speak, and he just let her run it. And I was just like, so touched. But yeah, every single one of them are good. Like, I feel bad because whenever I compliment one of them, I don't want any of the rest of them to think that I don't have incredibly big, loving feelings for them. They're all fantastic. Every single one of them was just a joy for me. Like, I genuinely can't shit talk any of them. You know what I mean? I just think about like being on set with all of them, and they're so good. They're good at what they do, and they're good people. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and they had just not that it wasn't good in the first half, but just there's iconic moments in both, of him telling her about what Pekka killed my brother, whatever the exact line is. That's huge for him to share that. And also, I couldn't leave you not like this. She got his gloves for him. Like, okay, knife wife, love that. I do want to circle back quickly to, because I know we're really running out of time. I wanted to circle back to, obviously, the story with Alina and Mal and Nikolai ends in such a way where she's seemingly willing to go through with the political marriage just for the sake of trying to help the people of Ravka and all that. But then, of course, a Fjerdan assassin comes who gets herself doped up on Jurda Parem.
Jurda Parem, yeah.
Parem, which is a major thing for the Six of Crows book. And we see her use the cut, which is presumably a consequence of her using Merzost. See, you read it, you don't say it like that. And there's this like really interesting look on her face of seemingly hinting at something nefarious about enjoying the darker sides of Grisha magic. I don't want to ask for like major spoilers, so if you can't answer this question, you don't have to. But the one question I had was, is the way that her now having tapped into that, is it in any way supposed to be something that you get addicted to? Like, or is it just more so it's just a foreign alien thing in my body that's bad and it shouldn't be there? Like, I'm just trying to figure out psychologically kind of how that plays.
So some of it we kind of pulled from the books, because there is a certain point in one of them, and I'm blanking because it's been 1,000 years, where she has a little bit of both. Like by the end of the series, she has no powers, which is obviously not the direction we were going to go in. For me, and I say this specifically because like I can't say that the whole room feels this way. For me, some of it is a story about how like even if you do the thing, the trauma's not all gone. Once you go through a trauma, it's always there. It's all about learning how to manage it. And then the other thing, which I do think I can speak for the room, is like she fucked with Merzost, and this was the consequence. There is a price, and the price was this. Now the question is, what direction is she going to go in with it? We're not like going to make Alina the big bad guy. Like that's not, I say that. I mean, we haven't broken the season. I have no idea what we're actually going to do, but I don't think our intention was to like be like, Alina's the new Darkling. It's more along the lines of she messed with Merzost, and now we're going to have to see what it looks like for her to manage that and which route she goes. Baghra spent the whole season telling her, don't do it. It corrupts you. It corrupts your magic. It corrupts you. And so now that Alina made a choice and fucked with it, what's going to happen? You know, like, how is she going to manage that? And what does her story look like? You know, if you were to ask the Darkling would be like, of course, she's going to end up just like me. She's going to be lonely. She's going to be alone. It's going to be this. Probably not, because that would be repetitive television. So yeah, we're just going to explore what it looks like. But again, for me, some of the metaphor there really is like, you know, trauma stays with you, and how do you manage that?
So there's a lot more that I could ask about the plot, but because we're running out of time, I want to make sure that I bring up the fact that Eric, as we've already said, did an interview sharing that you guys did do a writer's room for Six of Crows. So if Netflix were to greenlight it, if Shadow and Bone season 2 gets enough viewings, I don't know, the analytics need to be high up here above Michael Carrington and Stephanie Zanoni's head. One of the things that was most interesting to me about this revelation was that two of the writers that were confirmed as being part of that ensemble of writers were Joshua Levy and Prati Srinivasan, which was a surprise to me because I've interviewed both of these people. They came onto my channel, I think like 2 years ago, to talk about their movie Plan B. I did not know that they were writers on Six of Crows, which makes it so much funnier in hindsight, because I think when I messaged Josh to ask, hi, like, I'm so-and-so, if I could do an interview, I'm pretty sure I said that I had interviewed you. I probably linked one of the interviews. I've interviewed a screenwriter before, so it's not a weird thing for me to be asking you this. No idea that you two have been working. I don't know the exact timeline of if you'd already written it or were already working on it. I don't know, but it's just really funny how in hindsight destiny wanted us to collide with one another. So I'm not asking you to spoil what you've written, but did you want to talk a bit about working with them? I don't know if you've worked with them before.
I worked with them for the first time on this, and since I am not really allowed to talk about the thing, I will say this: they were a fucking great episode, man. They're lovely. I love Josh and Prati. Like, they were the only new additions. They were fantastic. They were really good at what they did, and like, again, they wrote such a good episode that I will be super mad I was just, yeah, it was so good. I really hope we get to make it. I don't know that we will. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and for anyone who doesn't know, those two specifically did an Inej-centric episode. So what does that mean? I don't know, because I don't work on these shows, but I just know what I saw on Twitter, which is them saying, oh yeah, we wrote an Inej episode. Just like Christina said, I wrote a Wylan episode. And I'm going like, okay, cool, fun, work, fierce, love it. So yeah, it's just one of those things where I hope that even people who haven't read the books know that there's some really good material in that duology, because if you feel at all like the material thus far has had too much YA stuff, I feel like a lot of the YA-ness is gone once you hit Six of Crows. It's basically like Ocean's 11, but with magic, and also with we're gonna make some problems for some fascists.
Yeah.
And that's such my vibe.
It's also darker. Like the book is darker. Yeah. I you know, if it doesn't happen, let's see how much I talk about things. I don't know.
No, I see this all the time actually. Like when shows get prematurely canceled, whomever's like the showrunner or whatever, somebody always comes out and they're like, yeah, so this is what we were gonna do. And then everybody goes, rats.
Basically. I mean, like at that point, like what is there? You know, like we'll see what happens. Like the version of it where we get to make it is the one that I obviously want, but like we'll see what happens. Like unfortunately, we have so little control over what's going on at Netflix. Like if anybody is paying any attention to Deadline, then they'll know that there's some stuff going on in television across the board. Like all the networks are in a place of disarray right now, and like we don't understand. We understand to a certain extent, but like, you know, they've got shareholders they've got to answer to, and like there's all these like reorgs going on, and the way that like, you know, I've worked there for 4.5 years, and it's just not the same place that it was when I first started working there. So like, I don't know what our odds are, but I do, you know, Sandmantic took for freaking ever to get renewed. Ginny and Georgia, I don't think
Wednesday. And that was like such a massive hit. I was a little too old to like Wednesday as much as its biggest fans liked it. I didn't dislike it. If anybody thinks it's weird for people to say, hey, if you want a Six of Crows show, you have to watch Shadow and Bone season 2. To that I say, have you watched any television show ever? Do you know how ratings work? Like this has been around since before streaming was ever a thing. It's basic cable. The only difference is that Netflix is a lot more cloak and dagger about hiding their numbers, but it's always been like this.
Yeah. Also, to be perfectly honest, I love working on this show. Like the room is incredibly healthy. The cast is a good cast that gets along. There's like really no drama there. And like the crew came back for season 2. It's a very healthy, happy production. So of course I want to go back. I love the material. I love the people that I'm working with. And like, quite frankly, if I don't make a plea for people to watch the show, I'll feel like I didn't do enough. You know, I'm willing to like, look, nobody wants to be like, please read my book or please watch my show or please read my comic or please, nobody wants to do that. But like the world that we live in right now is like, if you don't get a lot of promotion from the people who are making the thing, like it's on you. And I want to feel like I did everything we could to get the show renewed. So, you know, if we don't, like, I also know that that's not really, I don't have any control over that. So if people have a problem with me being, you know, self-promotion, like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like,
I mean, I'll self-promote. Go watch my interview with Josh and Prati if you want to get an insight into how do these people vibe with each other, how do they work with each other, because they're a writing duo, which is also something kind of different. I mean, a lot of times when you see screenwriters credited on an episode, it's one screenwriter. Sometimes you'll have like a story by, teleplay by, it's a separate credit, but a lot of times it's just one screenwriter on an episode. I would be interested in seeing what insight they would want to bring to that character, because you know, it's like, it's such a weird juxtaposition when I see people complaining. They're like, I can't believe you didn't get into Inej's backstory, blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, it's been hit, there's like bits of it that have been done. You haven't gone all the way yet, but presumably if Inej is getting an entire episode, you're going to get a whole lot more distance and mileage out of that. And so it's like, so you want to complain that the adaptation isn't done 100% the way you exactly wanted it to be done. So you're openly, publicly demanding that the show be canceled, but then you're going to throw a temper tantrum if it does get canceled that you didn't get to see Inej's backstory, even though you've got 2 writers that have openly stated on Twitter that they've written an episode just about her or predominantly about her. You got to make up your mind one way or another. I'll say, like, I want to see a Six of Crows show. Like, I want to see the heist. I mean, I don't need to see Matthias out of Hellgate, but you know, we don't always get things the way we want them. But actually, no, I do want to see the show continue because, like, he's still alive, so the story's not finished yet.
Don't joke about that.
Yeah. No, he has... I mean, I wish I could talk about it.
And also just, like, I love a good heist. And also just the fact that I feel like a lot of crime media, it can kind of toe a line of you have to ask yourself some ethical questions. And you have to dig into, is it moral for me to be into this? And I'm like, oh, no, they're moral for, like, who... What? Not to give away the entire plot, but like they're completely in the right at every step. Maybe not Matthias, but like everybody else, like they are completely correct. Nothing they do is incorrect. Every decision is correct and super fun to watch. Oh my God. And I want to see Nina.
I know.
What happens at the end of that book, the way oh my God. I know, like, it doesn't, there's consequences from what she does at the end of the book, which are not going to be fun to watch her suffering, but in the moment, it's going to be a really cool finale, I would imagine. Like, just... But I'm also mad that, like, they didn't let her pull the trigger.
You know,
let her pull the trigger. I don't care. I don't care. Let her pull the trigger. I think it's just because I love James Cameron, where he's... The entire Avatar movies, the entire message of that is, like, violence is the answer, actually. That's the entire message of, like, oh, right. Colonizers are invading your land to pillage your natural resources. Violence is the answer, actually. That's the entire... I love it. I love it. So, you know, I want to see my little band of misfits, my found family going on a heist and you know, being varying degrees of good or not good at expressing their emotions.
Dude, it's I
forgot to talk about Inej and Tolya.
Oh!
people had all kinds, really quick. People had kind of feelings about that, but you know what I liked about it is that, okay, Kaz is not ready right now. He needs more, for as much as you people demand a slow burn, so clearly he needs more time because he does everything at an excruciatingly slow pace to get himself to a place where I don't know what we will get. Maybe like a forehead touch. I don't know. Like something, you know, like some type of, maybe we'll get within an inch away from each other's faces. Like, I don't know. People always complain that it's going too fast. It's like, okay, she's literally been captive for her entire life. She never got to date. So let her date some other guy. And then it'll be the thing of my head wants one thing, my heart wants another. I got to follow my heart. I'm going to go back to this damaged, wounded bird. And that'll be that.
I'm just going to put this out there. I think people have been reading into that way more than they need to. Because for one thing, Tolya has a crush. Have you met Inej? Of course. Like, it's so hilarious because, like, the idea that we're going to, like, make them a thing and not Inej is, like, wild. Because it's like, dude, the guy has a crush on her. And, like, he offered her his hand. And it just illustrated the massive problem that Inej has with Kaz, right? Yeah. That's all this is, man. Yeah. Also, to be fair, the writer's room was also just like, you know who'd be really cute? Tolya and Inej. But like, we're not gonna not like, we know what we're doing, guys.
Yeah, the end game is still the end game. It's just, I just like, also, I just like the idea of somebody who isn't creepy and gross paying her a compliment, being, ooh, you're good at killing and you saved my life. Why is that kind of hot? You know, like that was the energy he was giving. And what's wrong with that?
Dude, Tolya is an interesting character to me because like in the books, like, he doesn't really have anybody and he loves poetry. And so I'm just like, if he were into somebody, what would that person look like? And it's like, oh, a capable, amazing woman who like gets shit done and saved his life. Like he has a crush on her. Like,
well, and also he didn't act like he was into her at all until she saved his life. Like that was specifically the inciting incident of like, oh no, wait a minute. Like, am I the damsel? Wait, have you seen The Lost City?
No. Wait.
Oh my God. Yes. There's a part where Channing Tatum is like, wait, am I the damsel in this? And he is. And it's so funny. Oh, Christina, you love a himbo. You got to watch The Lost City. He's the most himboist himbo to the epitome of himbo written by a woman is Channing Tatum in The Lost City. It's so...
Please let us know if you get through all right. If we don't hear from you, Fabio's got to die.
Wait, I'm the damsel in distress?
I just want you all to know that Mal is absolutely a himbo. He's a little dumb.
I love the idea of, because Amita is so tiny. We talked about this last season, remember? When
She's not actually that tiny. That's the thing that's amazing. She seems tiny because Freddie and Kit are super tall.
Well, I mean, Lewis is not, you know, anyway, her being just this tiny little petite with beautiful hair, and just this large muscular man being like, oh my God, like, she saved my life. That's so cool. Like, wow.
Totally a finger. Lewis Tan having a crush on her is so cute.
Yeah.
It's so freaking cute. Like, this poetry reading, snack eating, like, beefy dude is just like, oh, the wraith is cute. It's adorable.
For as much as people are being like, oh my God, there's so much stuff crammed into the season, there's so much else left to tell. So if you want to get even a slice of that, watch Shadow and Bone season 2, rewatch it, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your wife, tell your kids. I was thinking of like, hide your kids, hide your wife. You know, tell everybody to watch. I want to see what Nikolai gone demon or whatever we call it. Since we didn't get to see him with wings, I would assume that's a budget thing. If we got to put this dude in wings and like set up wires and stuff, Jekyll and Hyde or whatever, you know, literary.
One other thing I want to point out about the Nikolai, like, crowing, like, when he becomes this winged creature, is it's like he spends so much of the third book just flying around and occasionally showing up and like cawing, and I'm just like, I want Nikolai to be an active character in this show, you know? I love him. There is so much to explore in King of Scars, but like, we weren't going to do it this season, you know? Like, we wanted him to be part of the thing.
Yeah. And I want to see Jesper with his dad, all the great stuff of Jesper with his powers. I was like, oh, I wish his dad was here. I want him to have this conversation because I really like his dad. Like, his dad is so confused about what's going on, but you know, he's doing his best and he loves his son. And I wanted to see that, you know, I didn't expect to see it in this season, but I was just like seeing what was in this season. I was like, oh, I want to see his dad. I want to see that conversation. Like, oh, but I love that if we were going to see one, if it gets prematurely canceled, like every other thing from Netflix, I'm glad that we got to see Jesper's mother, because I you know, I have my feelings about reading the books. I'm like, oh, so we get her for 5 seconds, another fridged mother, like every other fairy tale. Oh, I'm so tired. But yeah, so I love that we got to see her. And yeah, it's just like, there's so much else left to get into. I want to see this heist and like, I don't know, like, and I love the idea of Alina having to deal with Jurda Param being a problem when she's like, oh, cool, like I vanquished this abusive man, I destroyed the fold, now we can like rebuild. And it's like, and now Jurda Param.
It's like, sweet Mal, not necessarily the sharpest tool in the shed, but even he was like, it's gonna take a lot more work, friend. Like, there's a lot of shit coming up the pike. So yeah.
So there's so much left to get into, so hopefully we get the opportunity. And if anybody feels like there was something that they really wanted to know about and we didn't get to, just leave your questions in the comments. And if you're well behaved, I can check with Christina and see if she's willing to come back if we need to do a follow-up, because we tried to get to everything, but there's a lot of characters, a lot of stories, and Christina is a busy boss lady with you know, her career and her family, so she's got stuff to do. So, you know, if you're really nice and you want something answered, maybe she'll come back. I'm not promising anything. Be nice, be kind, and yeah, well, congratulations, Christina, on a great season. I had a lot of fun watching it.
Thank you. And I hope everybody enjoyed it. Yeah, and I really hope we can make some more, because like, I really love what I can't discuss, but we've written. And I really want more. Like, you know, in my ideal scenario, I get to work on both shows. So fingers crossed, we'll see what happens.